everyone, I hope you're all well. I'm Karen Doyle, Operations Director of CTAM Europe. Welcome to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. I'm pleased to welcome our panel today, but I'm going to let our very own CTAM Europe board member, Marco Frazier, introduce both panelists shortly. Today's topic is the hot topic of the moment, FAST TV. We're due to last around 45 minutes with time for questions at the end, so please use your Q&A button. As always, the recording of this presentation will be posted on the members only section of ctameurope.com. If you're not a current member, we'd love to have you join us, so please email info@ctameurope.com for details on how to sign up. Members have access to 2 webinars a month, an annual symposium, which has been announced this week, is happening in London at the end of January. So there's a live symposium and a lot of opportunities for networking there as well. Members also have access to webinars and monthly podcasts from our colleagues at CTAM US. Another one short update, our flagship program is the fantastic week-long executive management program at INSEAD, and it's now over 2/3 full. So if you are interested in signing up, now is the time. I'll follow up with details on the program in the next day or so, and your details will also be shared with the panelists who may in turn follow up with you. So enough from me. I'm going to take myself off screen now and leave you with the FAST crew. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karen. And it's a pleasure to be here with everyone today. I have the pleasure of introducing you to 2 esteemed industry colleagues, and we've got quite a collection of locations around the world as well, too. So while Karen is based in the UK, I'm saying hello to you from sunny Miami today, and I'm going to introduce Chris Pfaff, who's the CEO of Chris Pfaff Tech Media LLC, and Christian Knaebel, who's the founder and CEO of Global Media Consult. The 3 of us recently got together at MIPCOM, and after a long absence, it was fantastic to be together in person. It was a very busy MIPCOM this year, and clearly one of the hot topics there was fast channels. In fact, Reed Midham organized a group of 8 roundtables on the topic of Get Ready to Go Fast, where Christian, Chris, and I were each asked by Reed Midham to host an individual roundtable. So with that, we are ready, I think, to talk a little bit more about this subject. So I'd like to introduce both Chris Pfaff and Christian Knaebel. Could you each give a brief intro about yourselves before we dig into this interview?
Yeah, hi. Great to be here. Thanks, Marco and Karen. As Marco said, Chris Pfaff. I'm the CEO of Chris Pfaff Tech Media LLC. I'm based in the New York area. I'm one of the founders of the Producers Guild of America New Media Council. I served on the board of directors of the PGA for 5 years, and I'm also the co-chairman of the storytelling committee of the VR/AR Association. And again, been working with European startups for the last 13 years quite extensively, and we service a wide range of media tech companies.
Thank you, Chris. Christian?
Yeah, hello, thank you, Marco. Thank you, Karen, for having me. I'm Christian Knaebel, Managing Director of Global Media Consult. We are a boutique consultancy that I founded in 2005, based in Germany, but having a lot of global clients. We consult basically along the value chain of when content is produced, how it gets to the consumer, and try to navigate our clients through all disruption, transformation, changes in the TV industry. And fast TV is obviously one of the changes and trends that's hitting us here now, also in Europe. And I have lots of talks with clients, not only in Europe, also around the world, who are very interested and curious about this, how it will affect their market. And as you mentioned, we did this workshop at MIPCOM that really showed that people have a lot of questions, how fast will relate to their business. And so I'm happy that probably the 3 of us can shed some light on that and start this journey of discovery in how fast can change the world.
Fantastic. And speaking of that, let me ask you the first question then, Christian. So based on what we saw in MIPCOM a couple of weeks ago and all the other webinars, and I think Chris is at a nice technology event right now, a lot of companies are asking themselves, how do they create a successful fast service? What would your answer to that be?
Well, what we usually advise clients is to look at 6 elements of a fast service. One of the elements is obviously the market and the consumer you target. And in that context, how do you distribute your fast service? Because it doesn't help you to create a fast service and it's not being distributed widely, so you can monetize it. The other 5 features or elements would be what the product consists of, what features it has, the technology that you use, the content, obviously, which content you use, how it resonates, and how it sells advertising around it. And finally, the other 4 elements, which are sometimes very new to clients that we speak to, is how do you work with advertisers? And the other one is how do you work with data, getting a very robust data system in place. And I'm sure Chris can add a lot of other things because he has experience with fast. As we are here from Europe, we are still in the lab phase, I would say.
I would say that you're moving very quickly, rapidly, fastly, etc. I mean, you look at what Pluto has done in Europe in really just the last year. I think that's a good way to look at it. But I think that Christian's absolutely right. I mean, there's some essential elements. Of course, having the right ad tech partners is huge. The right ad stitchers. There's a lot of great new tech coming in that helps people build better ad decisioning, like what Panthera is doing with Second Look. So you don't have some of the same ad pods running over and over again. You can be much more contextual. And I think it gets also to addressability for audiences. And the bigger issue for me is, I mean, distribution. They used to say, content is king and distribution is King Kong, and context is Godzilla, or whatever, the new phrase is. But I think that distribution, of course, is critical. But the bigger issue for me is audience. You can be on 32 platforms. You can be everywhere, but who's watching and when? And I think those are key things. So it's the same old story, that goes back to any show you're putting on. Where's the audience? Where's the audience that's going to relate to that spend? So marketing, of course, and intelligent audience building is going to be even more critical, I think, in this sense, because people aren't paying. I think they will be watching their pennies much more globally in the coming year. So I think that's really probably one of the biggest issues if you're going to launch. Figure out your audience first and how to market. And then you can check all the other boxes down the line. But, that's the way I look at it.
I think you're both exactly right. And Chris, the points you're mentioning point out that this is really sort of a continually evolving space. There's a lot of evolution and things that need to be addressed. You mentioned Panthera and their product Second Look. Maybe not everyone knows exactly how that works for SSAI, for the server-side ad insertion, but there are not problems, but there's areas that can be better optimized, and things are evolving quite quickly to address some of those ways to better monetize. But tied to that, how did the two of you look at the differing OTT consumption patterns that we're seeing, both US and Europe, and mobile versus TV? Chris, why don't you take this one first, and then Christian can answer that one.
I think that you're still seeing a massive amount of viewing on CTV. It's like 70%, and that continues to grow. Roku just announced, I think yesterday, a whole block of new channels. So they're still the big dog and still the market leader in FAST. So, again, you've got big media companies, of course, like, Paramount with Pluto TV, and Comcast with Xumo, and Fox, Murdoch with Tubi. So I think that the play really, from my side is that you're really looking at behavioral patterns that have been existent for a long time in mobile. In the US, Latinos have really sort of over-index in mobile, and have for 2 decades. So VIX, which is the Televisa Univision service, does well on mobile. I think sports still does well on mobile, certainly on the SVOD side in the US. But and tablets, a little bit more. I think the younger demo definitely skews more mobile, but I think it's going to take a while before those numbers increase on the mobile side and decrease maybe on your big plasma screen. But it's still a connected TV world for fast in the US. And as I said, just given what Roku has invested and what you can do to roll your own Roku channel or others, I think they're going to make it easier for content owners and rights owners to do that. So, but I think that, again, technology will win out, and how people address audiences. If you're giving something away to your audience through a mobile marketing program, then I think you'll probably see more fast TV on mobile, particularly in the US in the coming year.
Okay. And Christian, what's your view on that particular point?
Yeah, obviously you have to differentiate between Europe and Africa, for example, and the Asia Pacific region. Or over here in Europe, most people still use the big screen to watch television, and obviously this is also where you will see fast TV initially. And the main inroad is via Samsung and these players. And overall in Europe, I think you have about 60 million homes with connected TV devices, and most of them will be or are a smart TV. And I think Samsung has like 30–35% of that market share. And also you saw it through the pandemic. People were going to the big screen instead of so I think initially in Europe, you will focus on the big screen for a fast TV service. The other thing what I always tell people is, if you look at the CTV penetration and also like the smart TV penetration, there's one thing whether people have a smart TV at home or have bought one, but is it really connected? That's the other question, and there's not lots of data on that one, at least that I have found. So when people look at their local market, you should look for this kind of data as well, not only how many smart TVs have been sold, but are they connected? Do people have really a broadband access at their home? Cost of data might impact that, also the usage and things like that. But I believe for some time, we will have the big screen as the main device. Different so in Africa. Africa has leapfrogged, lots of people watching on mobile. At least you can assume that the mobile is connected when they watch, and same in Asia.
Yeah, I think it's important that we remember that not all markets are going to develop the same way. Clearly, there's different patterns, and not just even just by region, but also by service. Chris, you mentioned VIX, for example, and its success on mobile versus fixed TV or TVs, and I think possibly that's a regional difference, but also a demographic difference in that case, and each service is going to be a little bit different. So with that in mind, maybe I could ask you each how you feel that streaming in general and fast in particular, does it create a more viable option for niche content producers or for super fan audiences of particular content?
I think it does. I think we've seen that for years, actually. But again, the key is really getting your audience, building your audience. Distribution with niche channels can be a wonderful thing. But again, if you super serve a very passionate audience, then great. You know what you're doing. There's nothing really new here. I think that there will be certainly more niche channels coming from even the big guys, on the block. And I think, ultimately you'll see some hits that may bubble up and may, go other places. But You know, I mean, we've seen this for years, particularly with what used to be the MCN universe on YouTube channels. And I don't think that's changing. I think what will become a much bigger concern and consideration set for these niche channels is how they compete or even collaborate with the likes of a TikTok. You know, TikTok has now overtaken just about everybody. There's a new report out, I think, from Omdia talking about that, and it's nothing that we don't know. But I think that those social media platforms that address very well their niche audiences will have to be considered and potentially integrated into those niche channels in order to maintain their audiences.
And I fully endorse that, you know, and I see it especially as a growth opportunity for FAST outside of the US to focus on niche, thematic, and local channels. So yeah, really opportunities to get to your audience that you haven't had so far. If you had to go to a large cable operator and try to get your channel distributed, good luck on that one. But FAST is really opening up the market and helps you to target your niche. And a FAST TV channel, and I endorse what Chris says, is you have to see it in a wider concept of how you address your niche, how do you address your audience. And the FAST channel can be your linchpin to build a community around your theme, around your niche. You target them through social media, you target them maybe through other media. But as always, in the end, a FAST TV channel is a linear channel. It's the famous campfire that you can create. And if you work across different media, you have also a very nice proposition to the advertisers that you can target your niche, your specific audience across different media. And that's why I think it's very good to look at it as an opportunity and as a strategic element in your media strategy. I even know that brands are now looking, is it worthwhile for them to do a FAST channel and target maybe through a certain lifestyle theme or lifestyle niche, that the specific audience or the consumer segment that we want to address with their brands. So opportunities are actually going beyond pure content producers in that sense.
Right. And I think those are some important points. Do you think that at this stage in evolution that FAST is a strategy that can stand on its own for a producer to make money, or is it part of a multi-pronged strategy across the media ecosystem, or can it be both depending on who that producer is? How would you see that?
I think it's really both. I'm sorry, was that addressed to Christian? I think it's really both. I think that you're already seeing this. I mean, you're seeing different tiers. I mean, the big SVOD services that have launched. I mean, let's look at Peacock and you know, obviously the Paramount Plus. They've had ad tiers for a while. Yeah. I think that if you have a show, I mean, there's nothing to stop somebody from launching a pop-up channel that may even address a show. I mean, if you look at things like, you know, The Talking Dead or other things that relate to hit shows that have been on cable for a while, I think that's a really good place to go. You know, but again, you know, the default was always to have a YouTube channel, right? Or maybe you have a group on Facebook Watch or wherever audiences exist. So I think that it is something to experiment with. The big knock was always, oh, why should I roll a Roku channel? Nobody can find it. And to me, that's a misnomer, because then it means that you're not doing your job as a marketer. And you know, if Shonda Rhimes or some big name producer wants to come out with a FAST channel just to experiment or dip toes in the water, great. You know, you want to do that with a brand studio like Pepsi, great. I think that it really, I think it opens up a lot of discovery possibilities. Is a great way, you know, getting back to something Christian said about understanding your data set. But I think that it gives a lot of room for experimentation. And I think that advertisers really need to experiment as much as anyone with FAST. And so whatever deals they can work. I mean, you know, the old saw in Hollywood is this: the show doesn't get greenlit unless you get the car deal, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, well, I mean, maybe this is the moment, you know, for automotive manufacturers and people in that ecosystem to start looking at fast channels. You know, just saying.
Yeah, and I would advise content owner, as you just said, Chris, to always look at both options. You know, I think for maybe a niche producer, it might make sense just to focus on fast, but I would be careful about that. For once, you know, linear TV, traditional TV is still a huge market where there's still demand for content, also from streamers. But also, and you know, if you already produce for linear and traditional TV, the other element on fast is you reach an audience that you might not reach with linear TV. I think I saw a number about 48% of people that watch fast TV don't watch linear TV at all, traditional TV. And so in your basically marketing mix or targeting your audience, fast should really play a role. And so far, no one is really producing specifically for fast. I think Roku started it. I think they announced they will produce. So far it has been more a long tail part of your business, you know, using our old archive, using existing content. We might see this changing over time, that you really produce fast.
I agree. I agree. But, you know, I think technology, again, has made big breakthroughs even in live streaming for fast. We're seeing it in sports. You know, we work with Mux IP, whose Fast Hub is used by something called the Grappling Network, which is now 24/7 streaming and streaming live, you know, wrestling events and all this stuff. I mean, yeah, super niche audiences that are going to, you know, be very attractive to advertisers.
I want to add another point that I actually had in a discussion with clients is like, you mentioned it earlier, Chris, that we need to look at what is the budgets that people have out there over time, and also channels. You know, we see that everyone is now looking, also big names in the business, looking at cutting costs. And we likely see that pay TV channels will be cut. People will cancel their subscriptions. You know, cord cutting is going on. So fast is a viable alternative to that. Because if you still want to reach your audience, you can offer them your content via fast and monetize it there. It's in many markets, it will become more and more difficult to sell to pay TV operators or sell your pay TV channel. So for sure, if you produce content, and if fast is not on your radar at the moment, you're making a mistake.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd like to pick up on two of the points that you guys just mentioned in those responses, and make an analogy to the world of fine wines, if I could. So in the wine world, single property vineyards are you know, esteemed and recognized as being a bit more prestigious. Are we seeing single property channels, more and more of those in the fast world? So that's the first part. And tied to that, do you think that this growing world of fast is influencing the way that producers are producing content? So not just as a way, you know, so even on linear, platforms were creating the James Bond channel or those kind of channels. But is that going to evolve, and are producers going to be producing content specifically just for fast?
They might, but again, it's who pays the bills. What brand deals do you have? You know, what audiences do you want to either ignite or accelerate or expand? Pop-up channels, I think, are great for somebody to do. You know, you want to do a 30-day, 60-day, you know, channel. I think that whole live shopping, you know, thing that has been really going on. It started pre-pandemic, but I think you're seeing more from the likes of Amazon and others who are really diving in with brands. And, you know, if they can hook somebody, you know, whether it's with an existing property or it's something new, you know, who knows? I mean, but I think that it's going to become much more attractive. And as Christian said, I mean, you know, you've got to follow where the money is going or it's not going. you know, there will be a right sizing for consumers in terms of their spend on content. And, you know, I think it's just what becomes cool. If there's a cool show on Freevee or something else, I mean, or it just becomes cool to watch retro TV on ETV or Pluto TV. I mean, you know, that's where I think marketers may want to go. So I think that it's definitely something that I think brands will pull you know, into conversations with you know, producers and distributors, and I think even within those studios, whether it's a Banijay or it's a Sony Pictures Television or whatever, it's like, great. You know, Sony has had a lot of experience that way. I mean, they were, you know, some of the early players with Crackle. It was originally called Grouper.
Yep.
And look where that's gone. I mean, that's 18 years since that whole thing started. So I do think that you know, that will become more of a trend, but how quickly? And again, we're not talking about a ton of ad money here. I saw a projection recently. He said it's like, what, $6 billion is going to be the target ad revenue for FAST in the US in the next 3 years.
Yeah,
Not a hell of a lot, right? But it is a start, you know. And back to what Christian was saying, I think you can follow the behavioral shift in terms of devices where people are viewing. So yeah, I think producers have to look at that. But again, we've seen some of these brand delivered deals, whether these are things that are done for a device or a tech company. I think it's going to have to accelerate more. And the mix is really key too. If you have a fast channel that's an extension of something that's on a cable tier or linear, because you will have the technology very soon to drive fast channels back to linear and vice versa. I mean, so I think that makes it easier for people who are used to producing and cutting deals for linear distribution.
yeah. And in that context, you know, I would be careful just to focus on one fast channel if you launch one. Some experience that we saw with clients is like, if you have a certain amount of content, it's worthwhile maybe to slice the content and do 2-3 channels, just also to create more inventory that you can sell. Think of that. Secondly, what I mentioned earlier, if it's just one channel, it needs to be embedded in a wider strategy around media, having other outlets of media. And another element, I think, what FAST can do is it can be your super funnel, you know, to guide people into other services that you have. What the people at Pluto are saying is it's a huge funnel for them, that the Pluto TV, to guide people into other services or offers that the Paramount world has to offer. And so if you have just one channel, where do you funnel the people to? You know, if you have 2-3 channels, you can funnel them around in your little world, or funnel them obviously to some other media services that you offer. And so that's why I think you need to really look at it launching more than that. We have seen clients that actually successfully launched, however, I would advise against that, with just 15 hours of content. We have channels with just—
How many hours? 50?
15. And
15.
15. I would say make that number much higher to make it an attractive channel, but they said it worked with less, with just as low as 15 numbers of hours. It has worked, and we sold advertising. I would say go more for like the 100 hours to really make it attractive and make people stick. And do not forget, you know, the beauty of FAST has 2 things. It's a lean back experience for the audience, and the audience is likes to be programmed to. So as more interesting program you can provide them, and as easier you make it for them to discover it and using it and enjoying it, that the more you are successful with your offer, and you can likely do that with more than one channel.
Yeah, no, and that I think we'll come back to that in regards to live TV and broadcast TV. But I want to pick up on a couple of points that you both mentioned, because I think it's important. Chris, you mentioned that the amount of advertising revenue is relatively modest compared to the overall advertising revenue in the TV ecosystem, but it is the fastest growing segment in the US, at least right now, for advertising. Mm-hmm. But tied to that, then, since it is a relatively modest amount, do we see that as continuing to grow at this pace? Is it maturing? Is it just getting started? And I recognize that all the markets are in a bit of a different stage, but particularly in regards to the US market, Chris, where do we see that? Where do we think that might be in its evolution?
I think it's still very early because when you consider what we've seen with respect to the the SVOD side of the house, I mean, 3 years ago, literally November of 2019, if we had this conversation, we'd be talking about the streaming wars. It was Disney Plus launching, and Peacock was going to come out, and Paramount Plus, and I mean, you saw this incredible roster of SVOD services, and yes, Quibi, and that changed massively. As Christian said, the pandemic certainly gave us an interesting view into viewing habits and people looking to discover. So it's still early, and I think that the economic headwinds right now will probably accelerate fast if for that reason alone in the U.S. And I think people will logicalize their spend as consumers. I think that's going to happen, with advertisers as well in terms of where they look to build audiences. So I think it's still very early. I mean, I think that over the coming months, more and more people will be aware of the offerings, or will take advantage of whatever subscriptions they have. Certainly, I mean, Roku. As I said, I mean, they acquired a good chunk of the assets of Quibi, and that enabled them to launch Roku Originals, and they're doing very well with that. So, I think that, I think that it's still quite early. It may seem to us as though it's been around for quite a long time, but I think for the consumer, it's still there's a lot of room for growth is the point.
Yeah. And if you look at some numbers that obviously interested parties like vendors published, I think I saw one of the forecasts that's the market for fast TV advertising is in 2026 around 55 billion worldwide. And one of the largest chunk is actually coming in Asia. And if you speak to people in Asia, we become very bullish. You see already companies and players out there trying it. Another interesting number is that the number of ad impressions, I think in Asia from mid last year to mid this year grew by 900%. And over here in Europe, I think it grew by 500%. Obviously, it has to do because the market is growing and more services are coming into the market. So obviously, you also grow the number of ad impressions that you can bring. But when I see we have some clients who have launched fast services like this summer only, and with that 2 or 3 month experience that we have, they were overwhelmed actually how much advertising they could sell right so quickly. And and what we also often been asked, okay, what's the potential out there? How much money can I make? Obviously, that's difficult to forecast because we are looking at a market that's only beginning to be built, and so empirically you have little data that you can use. What you can use, however, is like to say, okay, what can we compare it to? And one thing you can compare it to is maybe to your local YouTube market. How is that performing? What's the CPM on that YouTube market? What do good YouTube channels make in terms of money? I think that starts to give you a little indication of the potential that you have with a fast channel in your local market.
Those are excellent points. And it's interesting that we keep using YouTube as a reference point and benchmark for a lot of these. Mm-hmm. For the talk today, I'd like to point out that if we're going to stay on schedule, we've got about 10 minutes left. So I'd like to ask each of you one more question, but perhaps the audience could think about questions that you'd like to ask. I've seen that 1 or 2 questions have come in, but at this stage, I'd like to ask you all if you have any questions to send those in. And while you're sending those in, the question I'd like to ask is in regards to live TV and the major broadcasters in the different markets. What kind of relationship do you think they're going to have with FAST? We haven't seen that much direct participation from the broadcasters. They don't seem to think it's something for them right now, or they're trying to figure out how to best participate without, you know, changing things too much for their existing operation. How do you guys see that?
In terms of can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, Marco.
Yeah, what do we think that live TV, the major broadcasters live TV, what do we think that their relationship might be with FAST? Not today, but
traditional linear TV. Or?
Yeah, I think it's strong. I think that once they learn, I mean, we're just starting to see some of this now. I think that it will be very strong because again, if you want to super serve those niche audiences, that's you know the way to do it. The money in TV is still with live. You know, you look at sports rights. I mean, news is that draws live viewing. So I think that's a big deal. For, you know, obviously from a production standpoint. Okay, how do you do that? But yeah, if you look at the millions of people who go on Twitch every day. The Twitchers who are live streaming, I think that younger audiences are very used to this. And I think that fast channel producers and people who are building platforms around that will learn from what Twitch, and you know, both those who are multitasking and multi-viewing while watching a Twitch stream and doing whatever they're going to do. It allows for multiple content streams to occur. I think it would be really wise for people who want to program or have some live extension on their fast channel to look at that. So I'd say, look, I'm bullish on that opportunity because we're just starting to see some of these things happen. I mean, not for nothing, we're having this conversation not many days after Netflix announced their first live, production, which is with Chris Rock. He who gets slapped gets a really nice Netflix deal.
Apparently.
So right. So there you go. So you know, a big dog in SVOD is doing live for the first time. I think that will spur more interest in people who are going the fast route to do similarly.
Okay. Yeah, and what I see, like in markets where you don't have much experience at fast, is obviously the traditional live TV channels are the linear channels, the big channels in each market. We see them we see hesitation on their part because obviously they are afraid that they cannibalize their existing ad sales. So coming maybe back to the very first question, what's also important to launch a successful fast TV channel is if you are an existing broadcaster, you have to have the buy-in of your ad sales team to do that. I see it with lots of clients. The most obstacles is to convince those guys to come on board and try fast TV. And but once you do it, you know, as we said earlier, it's an extension of your audience segment, as you probably reach audience that you don't reach otherwise. One good example is news channel. News channels are traditional live channels. If we launch their fast TV service, what I'm hearing is everyone is very happy with it. News is also one of the most watched and segments in fast TV, and one that sells most of the advertising compared to other genres. Is news TV very, very popular, and this is like where you can see live TV works in fast TV and can be monetized. And you shouldn't be afraid of cannibalizing your existing ad sales. because sooner or later people will go to fast TV, and you better join the bandwagon and go over there as well and be one of the first. Because what we shouldn't forget, in many markets, it's also now about occupying a premium shelf space. So, and if you are a broadcaster, a live broadcaster in the market, you usually have a prominent position, and why not transfer this position as well into the fast world?
Okay, thank you for that. And I said I was going to ask one more question before we went to the audience questions, but I feel like I'd like to ask one more. And please, audience, send in more questions if you'd like. So my last question to each of you, and Christian, maybe we can start with you. What about the TV set, the actual screen number one, or whatever we want to refer to it as? Is that future-proofed? Is that going to be how we watch fast content, or what do you think is going to happen with that?
I think we have to really watch very carefully on the TV set, the development of the market there. And obviously, if you ask Samsung, LG, and all these people, they will say, yeah, that's the key element. And I'm afraid so it will become one of the key elements, not only about fast TV, but in a wider sense when it comes to content discovery, content curation. And that's where Samsung and the likes are positioning themselves right now. And fast TV will be, I think, in many markets, one of the main outlets will be on the TV set. And so you really need to look at it. And if you see, like, why did Sky in the UK now offer Sky Glass? They realized, okay, this is a big conduit, so we better bet on that. Also in the wider strategic considerations, as I mentioned, about content discovery, owning the living room, more or less, and owning the audience.
Okay. Yeah. I think that Christian's absolutely right. I mean, Samsung is the big dog there, but LG, has, done very, very well. Of course, they acquired Alfonso for LG Ads. So they're going to be a big player. Vizio, of course, is a big player in fast. And then you have what I thought was a really cool announcement a couple of months ago. TiVo announced and launched TiVo OS, and the first deal they did was with Vestel in Europe. And I thought that was really, really smart. And I think that you'll see a lot more happening with, specialty deals. I think it just makes perfect sense. I mean, you could see Walmart doing more of that. Anyone who's on that side from a retailer point of view, who's in the business of selling hardware, of selling displays. So I think that should be a much bigger story, and I think it will continue. But yeah, those, I mean, and Vizio, as I mentioned, is done very well and fast. So I think that I think that you might see some others who will join in, or at least dip their toes in the water. But it makes perfect sense. Okay, great. It does seem like the OEMs are becoming the new gatekeepers versus the previous generation of gatekeepers. There's no doubt about that. And we are getting close to time. So with that, I'll go to the questions. This is a question from Tom Woodley. And Tom is asking, what is the best way for a content company or a studio to initiate their own fast channel? And how to best market it? Don't you have to do the double lift to the market, both the channel and the platform? Sorry, to market both the channel and the platform. Christian, no, you don't. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Christian.
Okay, yeah. It depends, of course, which market you target. And we coming back to the initial question: what audience do you target? And how many channels can you launch? Does it make sense to launch it in-house, to really put most of the operation in-house? Or do you go just, you have these one-stop shop services that are around there, Amagi, Wohler, and you name them, and you just go there and give them your content. Obviously, that's the easiest way. But if you have a really large chunk of content, and if you have a dominant role in your market, I would seriously look at how much can I actually own myself. And And why not think about launching your own fast platform? Don't give the market to Pluto, you know, and especially in the local markets, I think you have still lots of room for launching your own service.
The prices will come down, and hi, Tom.
Yeah.
The prices will definitely come down. As Christian said, yes, there are, you know, some really good platform companies out there, but it does make sense if, you know, if you've got a good library, or you're launching, you know, some new shows, you've got new talent, the prices are coming down. I think, again, one of the bigger considerations is to look at how you would market to that audience, and look at, you know, sort of a multi-platform, you know, multimodal view to both engage and sustain. So it's not really that much of a double lift. And as I said, I think as the volume increases, you'll see some of the prices on the platform side come down, and you'll get more bang for your buck with technology. As I said, this is still very early days, but I think that's really the best way, maybe even, is to launch a pop-up channel for a limited amount of time to see you know, what kind of data sets you have, and try to condition your audience that way. Because distribution is not, and again, I say this, you know, not at the expense of distribution, but it's not the biggest deal. You can be, quote unquote, everywhere and have a very negligible audience. So I think that it's going to be easier for you to experiment with a pop-up channel. But I think Christian's absolutely right. You know, the more you can roll your own and own all of it, the better.
Absolutely. And with that, unfortunately, we're more or less at time, but I'd like to just recap a couple things that we touched on that I feel are particularly important. I think it's going to be important for us to watch the evolution in a couple of different areas, as Chris mentioned, on the ad tech side of things, because the monetization is obviously what everyone cares about at the end of the day. And there are improvements, innovations happening on that side. We'll have to watch very closely what's happening on the OEM side with Samsung and Vizio and others, but also even on the operating side. So Xperi TiVo, as you mentioned, the operating system side is an area that can impact how this evolves as well too. And we have to keep in mind that all the markets are evolving a bit differently. And while the US is certainly ahead in terms of the size of the fast channel market, we really are just the beginning of this. And there are going to be a lot of interesting opportunities on a regional, global basis for this as well. With that, to not run over time, I think we'll hand things back over to Karen. Thank you.
Thank you. Fascinating conversation. That I think we could have just carried on and listening to you for another hour or two, I would say. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining us. If anybody has any further questions, you can always email info@ctameurope.com and I will hand them over to Chris and Christian. So thank you again. Excellent conversation. And if any of our members are watching and wish to view it again, it will be available on CTAMEurope.com on the members only section. So thanks again, Marco, fabulous moderation as well there. Thanks, Chris, and Danke, Christian. See you all again. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.